Okay, thanks for sticking with me. We've gone through all of the basic processing tools in Lightroom now. Now it's time to work on some of our local adjustments. So the first one is cropping. It's just like any other crop tool you've likely ever used in any piece of software. Click a handlebar and drag it to resize. If you hold the Shift key, it will maintain the aspect ratio you have when you initially hit the Shift key. So if I'm full size and then I hold the Shift key, it will keep that aspect ratio. If I drag to a narrow crop and then hold the Shift key, it will maintain that aspect ratio. So not a whole lot to explain. Your straighten tool, you can either get your double arrows and you can rotate the image, and you can use the grid as a reference for finding your straighten. You can also do that manually by dragging the slider back and forth. You can click and drag the numbers, or you can type in a specific angle. Let's say you wanted to change -2 degrees, and it'll change -2 degrees. Pretty straightforward. This is your spot removal tool. It's fairly effective. For anything more advanced than just a simple spot, I would recommend doing that in Photoshop. But for something like this, let's say we want to get rid of these headlights that you can't really see the car, so they're not really helping us out. You just click on it, and it will try and find the pixels that it thinks match closest. If it doesn't do a good enough job, you can click that clone area, drag it, and tell it to copy pixels from a different part of the image. You can also change it from peeling to clone. Clone takes an exact copy of what you're looking at and places it where you've told it to place it. Peel takes the same texture from the copy position and replaces the texture but keeps the same lighting, and it does a pretty powerful job. It does a really good job of imitating your surrounding light sources and matching that. Sometimes it can get a little off. It has a really difficult time when you're working near very contrasting lines in the image. So if you need to replace a specific spot in that area, let's say we want to move this cloud, you're going to want to find a source spot that has a very similar line, and it actually did a pretty good job of replacing that line and keeping that texture in place. If I didn't like that, I can find a spot that has similar type of, oh, there we go, there's a good example of a poor job. This spot is too hot, and it's having a hard time matching it, so we should probably let it do its original thing and keep that replacement. Next tool is your red eye tool. If you're shooting with a flash, you know very well how a red eye appears. It'll appear in your subject's eye. Because of the flash itself, the light is bouncing off parts of the iris and giving that reddish hue. This lets you specifically target the red eye. You can see it's got that oval shape. You just click it on the eye and let it do its thing. This isn't a tool I use very often. These last three are probably my most favorite adjustment tools within Lightroom. Incredibly powerful. This is a graduated filter, and what it lets you do, it lets you take what you have in your basic controls, your temperature, exposure, highlights, shadows, contrast, clarity, your dehaze tool, sharpness and noise, and it lets you apply it to a specific part of the image. So let's say I want to make this part of my sky darker, more blue, and more saturated. So one of the things that I will do is right off the bat, I'm going to take my exposure all the way down, I'm going to click and drag, and I can see everything that's black is what's going to be affected. So then I'll reset this, and then I'm going to start to add more blue into my sky by dropping my temperature. You can see it's applying to that local selection only. And I want to saturate it some more, so I push some more saturation in there. Probably drag this down just a little bit more. So you can see that this adjustment has only been applied to this section where we highlighted it. These tools work very similarly. This is a circular adjustment tool, and it lets you use your adjuster in a circular shape. So let's say we want to create kind of a hot spot for where our sun is. We can increase our exposure. You're going to click and drag, and you can see it's creating a oval or circular type shape. Let's make this 2.5 so you can see it. From here, you can drag this up and out and change the shape of it. It will always be some form of oval. You can rotate it. Let's say we want to make it like an exaggerated oval. You can rotate how that oval is positioned within the image. And you've got all your adjuster tools here, so you can brighten this up or put a bunch more orange in it. Make a nice little warm sunspot. Specifically for skies, I use these tools all the time. Very handy for adjusting specific parts of the image, which I want to do quite often, and adjust that sky without affecting my foreground. The brush, it works just like the other two. It lets you create an adjustment and brush it into a specific part of the image. So let's say I want to brush a little bit more pinks into these foreground or into these lower clouds. So I can boost my pinks, take my exposure to like 0.1, and push our saturation up. You can see I've got this brush tool. You can use your left and right bracket tools, or on the keyboard, the left and right bracket buttons increase the brush size. If you hold shift, it will adjust the softness of the brush. You can see that the further those two lines get apart, the softer the brush is. The closer they get together, the harder edged it is. So we'll take our exposure down. You can see there's a hard edged brush and there's a soft edged brush. You can see the difference. This is our soft, this is the hard one. So I just want to brush in along these clouds. Just give it a little bit more pink, a little bit more juice. Turn it off, turn it back on. You can see what we've done to the clouds just by brushing in locally. Your brush controls are over here, and you do have the ability to create two different brush sets as well as an eraser tool. This eraser tool lets you erase parts of the image, which we're going to want to do up here, where we started to get some exaggerated purples. I can take my eraser brush and erase where that effect is applied from some of these more exaggerated parts of the effect. Just erase these deep purples that I didn't want. And there you have it. That's local adjustment tools. They work just like your camera raw tools, except you can apply them to specific parts of the image in a specific manner. And it gives you a little bit more creative control over processing instead of doing everything with a blanket process like these, which affect the entire image as a whole instead of select parts of the image. Hope that helps you. Hope that gives you some tools to make the most of your processing, and happy shooting.